So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is what is happening for people in terms of trauma and emotion coming up at this time, because there is an awful lot of grief that's coming up in us, and it doesn't matter how conscious we are, it doesn't matter how awake we think we are, there is something deep that is arising within us at this time. For many of us, it's still habitual practice to start to look at it and analyze it and try and personalize it. What is it that this is showing me? What is it that I need to be doing with this? And I think it's really important to remember that the more conscious we become, the more indicative our experience is of what is happening for the collective. And it's very difficult for us now to actually separate out personal experience from collective experience. So what I would suggest for many of us, and this is some of the guidance that we've been getting through this week, is it's important the acknowledgement, and we've spoken about acknowledgement and agreement quite a lot in recent months with the Masters, that it's not so much about repair or process, or it's not even about a release. It's actually just about, I acknowledge that this exists. I acknowledge that it exists as part of the human story, part of the human collective, and the great exposure of the totality of human is what's required in order for us to now move with every aspect of ourselves into a new paradigm of existence. So even the parts that we don't really want to know about, or the parts that we don't really feel a lot of coherence or resonance with, this is an opportunity to start to feel resonance with all of it. So the things that we've been talking about in the last 2 weeks in this conversation, a lot of it has centered around what happens when something arises within you and we seek to validate it with an external belief or an external agreement. So something like a sense of grief or a sense of sadness or a sense of anxiety or trauma that comes up within us, it's easy for us to try and attribute it to something so that it can be resolved, when really it's our opportunity to say, this exists. And when we can say this exists, just the same as we can say, I exist, that's almost like the secret key or the secret switch for it to really merge back into wholeness with us, so that you as an individual or perceived individual can move into the next experience, and also so that us as a collective humanity can move into the next experience. Because what we're seeing right now on the planet is an awful lot of us are conscious and awake enough to say, all right, we're done with this, let's move on to the next experience. But because the trauma and the grief and the sadness and what's residual is rising to the surface so that we can move in totality, it's actually hooking a lot of people back into belief again. And it's hooking a lot of people back into process. I really need to work on this. I really need to pay attention to this. Yes, paying attention, but not for the purpose of having a dance with it. Paying attention to acknowledge it so that it can come along and move back in totality with the great human shift. So I just wanted to start with that, because that's been a really big theme this week for a lot of people, myself included. So it's a great reminder, I think, that acknowledgement is the agreement, is the merging back into totality so that the next experience can arrive. Because I'm sure most of you, I know that I'm feeling, I'm just waiting for the next experience to arrive. So I'm going to be acknowledging and moving into an agreement with a lot of things that I'm feeling and experiencing this week.